Hi everyone, this is Mrs. Moriarty and I'm here to discuss with us topic 5.7, which is all about meat production methods. So remember, as I mentioned in class today, that we're going to spend time in Unit 5 talking a lot about how we happen to raise a lot of the food that we consume. We know that a part of that is harvesting crops like corn, rice, wheat, and soybeans, but another aspect of that, especially for developing countries, is how we happen to raise livestock and how we produce meat. So, how is meat produced and processed? A traditional way in which we can mass produce meat would be through what's called a concentrated animal feeding operation, or for short, a CAFO. This is usually either a large indoor or even outdoor structure that's designed for maximum output when it comes to meat production. This can help to maximize land use for this, which means it's going to maximize profit, most meat per unit of area. This helps to minimize the cost for the consumers, that would be us, purchasing the meat in, let's say, a grocery store. But as a result, because a lot of these animals live in very close quarters with each other, they are oftentimes given antibiotics in order to prevent the spread of disease. They can be given growth hormones in order to increase the amount of meat obtained from the livestock. Animals produce tremendous amounts of waste. So if you have all of these, let's say, cows in one given pasture all concentrated, they're going to produce a ton of waste. So you need to be able to hold that waste somewhere, and unfortunately, things can go awry and all of that waste can contaminate nearby surface waters or groundwater. Also, they're going to produce large amounts of greenhouse gases. Carbon dioxide, cow farts technically produce things like methane, CH4, and it can also produce N2O or nitrous oxide. So as I mentioned, where are you going to put all the waste from all of these animals living in this concentrated area? Well, oftentimes they have what's called a manure lagoon. This is a large, usually open storage pit where that animal waste or manure is going to be stored. That waste is going to contain high concentrations of ammonia or nitrates. It will also contain any growth hormones or antibiotics given to the animal. It will also have fecal coliform bacteria or E. coli, that is from their digestive tract. Heavy rains could potentially cause these manure lagoons to contaminate nearby surface waters or even groundwater. Denitrification of the ammonia found in their manure is what's going to produce nitrous oxide. That's a very powerful greenhouse gas which can continue to exacerbate global warming and climate change. They can, however, be emptied. They can be buried into landfills or turned into fertilizer pellets. Another aspect of manure lagoons that we also have to take into account is not only can they contaminate surface water, groundwater with excess nitrates, but they're also going to contain high levels of bacteria that can be toxic to us if it happens to consume. So that's oftentimes why you might hear about E. coli outbreaks and so on. We know that the excess ammonia can cause eutrophication to nearby surface waters, and the antibiotics and growth hormones have the potential to alter our own endocrine systems when we consume these meats. So what is an alternative to a CAFO? That would be more of free-range grazing. Free-range beef and chicken has become increasingly popular over the last several years. Free-range meat is more likely to be sustainable. Typically, these animals graze upon grass, more or less in an open field, gives them lots of space. So as a result, the free-range farming does not really require a tremendous amount of storage area or disposal of the waste that the animals produce, because when they go to the bathroom, their manure is then naturally fertilizing the grass that they eventually consume, kind of making this like mini carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus cycle. Free-range animals, because they're not so concentrated in one given area, are less likely to spread disease, and the use of antibiotics and medications can be reduced or maybe even eliminated. The free-range farming uses more land, however, right? So now these organisms are not quite as concentrated in this one area. They're going to be spread out, so that does mean more land, which usually goes back to being more costly to the consumer. So that's why when you go to the grocery store, right, you might see two forms of, let's say, beef. If you have traditional beef and then you have grass-fed beef, the grass-fed beef is most likely more expensive than the other traditional beef, since that cow most likely came from a pasture that consumed grass, while the other cow probably came from a CAFO and consumed corn. So here's a little practice FRQ. Remember, I recommend writing down your answer to your FRQ in your note packet as well as on the Edpuzzle. So here in this practice FRQ, it asks you to use the graph from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Describe the environmental impact of the increase in U.S. per capita, remember that means per person, availability of beef, pork, chicken, and then shellfish from the years 1910 to about 2017. So the correct answer here would be an environmental impact could be an increase in carbon emissions such as CO2 or methane. This is because a greater increase or reliance on livestock. An increased water use in order to provide water to the livestock for food that they consume. Or an increased use of antibiotics and growth hormones to maximize profits and ensure that people are getting more meat. And overgrazing of the land that they are eating upon. That can lead to desertification or no longer having arable land. All right, everyone, that is it for our practice FRQ and topic 5.7. If you have any other questions, please leave them at the end of the video.